And we're live. Yeah.
I've speaking of something that's kind of like an urban legend or a myth, I was looking around for stuff because I was just thinking like, I don't know, it was one of those stupid little Google things you do where you're like, I wonder what a myth is out there that I believe is a myth, but it actually isn't. And then like on a different tab, be like, I wonder what a myth is that I don't believe, but it's actually true. And I started trying to find something there. And I'm gonna say a couple, and I want you to tell me if this is a real fact, a true fact, or propaganda.
I'm psyched for this.
All right. Sex before competing in sports makes you worse because
that's a myth.
Backwards.
It's a myth. Kyle, you're pretty confident about that.
That's a myth. That's bullshit.
It raises your testosterone level, I'm told.
Is it?
That's why Ronda Rousey fucks before every fight.
You're correct, Woody. It raises your testosterone and it gets you hyped. Ovechkin says part of his game performance, can't tell if he's joking because he's Russian, hard to read that cadence, but he says he fucks before and after every game.
Ah.
To
his
make
poor
sure
teammates.
I was trying to. I wanted to make a joke. I couldn't form it.
Oh, looks like somebody didn't play too much.
I was like, that guy's ass must be sore. No, that's not
How about,
working. Kyle
How
nailed
about
it.
this one? Satan is the ruler of hell, according to Christianity. Is that true, or is that a myth, or is that real?
Okay, so I think it's true, but using psychology,
Don't you Google, Kyle?
I think it's going to be false.
I was going to look up something completely different, but I was about to Google. It had nothing to do with this. But you triggered something in my head about a different religion that believes that God is the true deceiver. And I've been Graham Hancock turned me on to that. I want to go to that in a second. But
Satanism.
As far as I know, no, Satan works for God. He did, right? Lucifer was one of the God's angels. He was jealous that God was loving man more than the angels, and he rebelled against God, and he was overthrown and sent down to hell, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that he's the ruler of hell because of what I just said. He was thrown into hell, right? Although everything like pop culture wise and everything I've ever been taught says, the guy with the viper-gated tail and the pitchfork down there, he's the one running the show. So
yeah.
I'm just going to say that the devil runs hell, though by its very nature, it seems like God runs hell.
I'm going to say that the devil doesn't run hell because I'm just getting that vibe.
Ahmed, does the devil run hell?
It's funny because in Islam, it's kind of similar to Christianity as far as hell and heaven and the devil and all that shit.
The first part of the Quran and the first part of the Bible are pretty much the same thing.
They're all Abrahamic religions.
They are similar. Yeah, there are Abrahamic religions and ideologies. A lot of them are similar. But in Islam, what we have learned is that no, he doesn't run hell. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll go with that. He doesn't.
So you're correct, Ahmed. And I guess all of you are correct. He does not run hell. He was sent to hell. And it's just always assumed that I guess because he was the first guy to show up in hell that he kind of established a base, I guess. And then as more people showed up, he just did like the pretend authority figure where it's like, you believe I'm in charge, so I am. And then send people around. But yeah, he's not actually in charge of hell.
Real quick, not to change the subject, have you guys seen The Invention of Lying? It's a movie from Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, I saw that right when it came out a long time ago.
Yeah, that movie is hilarious. Basically, people, maybe I shouldn't spoil it, but this movie takes place in a place where no one can lie. So everyone tells the truth 100% of the time. So this guy somehow imagines or starts lying, discovers lying. So he goes to the bank and he's short on money and he's like, the cashier woman is like, well, sir, our systems are down. How much money do you have on your bank account? And he's like, he wants to say 300, but he needs $800. So he's like, wait, I can say 800. And he says $800. And then she just gives him $800. So a few scenes later in the movie, he basically found every religion on earth, and he says there's a man in the sky, and he does that, and he says that. And if you do 3 wrong things, you go to a place that is not very nice or pleasant called hell. And if you don't do that, you go to a place where you get a mansion, and everyone gets a mansion. That movie's hilarious. I watched it a couple of weeks ago. It's pretty funny.
That religion I was thinking.
Oh, go ahead.
go.
Kyle. I'll jump in.
Quickly though, the religion I was thinking of, Graham Hancock was talking about this in one of his whatever you call it when you stand in front of a bunch of people with a fucking PowerPoint and tell them stuff. It wasn't a TED talk. It was somewhere else at a university or something. But he was talking about this religion that it believed that the Christian God was not a god, that he was actually a demon who had come to Earth to deceive humanity into believing that he was a god. That was his game. He likes to go places and make people or entities believe he's a god and then have them really worship him. And so what they explain, they talk about the Garden of Eden. And in this religion, they see the serpent as the good guy. He's coming into where humanity's imprisoned and saying, you've been fooled. You don't even know the difference between right and wrong. You're just here to worship that guy. That's all he's doing. He's just sapping your worship juice up, and that's all he cares about, right? Eat the apple, and you'll have knowledge, and you'll be freed from this evil, deceptive demon. And so they did, and God throws them out. And remember what God did after that happened. He's like, Eve, now not only you will be in pain the rest of your days, all women. And you'll be confused when you're thrown out of here, and you'll have to suffer the serpents and the beasts of the land. He just went to cursing us left and right when we ate this apple of knowledge, so we'd know the difference between right and wrong. Then look at like what he does, and I'm parroting what Graham says in his lecture. He burns us when we're bad. He forces us to worship him, praise him constantly. Are these the actions of a generous, kind, omnipotent, omniscient being? No, they're the actions of a fucking intergalactic demon who's fucking taking up our worship juice. Satan's the good guy.
That is point. That is pants on head retarded.
And like the Christians burned these people alive and persecuted them throughout the ages, and they went underground and they are no more.
I feel like both sides of this viewpoint are pants on head retarded. But
I'm just saying that being like, dude, Star Trek, that's not real. The real Star Trek story, they were in a Ford Windstar driving across the country. They weren't even in the future. And it's just like, no, that's not. You're just taking a fantasy story and making it into a slightly different fantasy story. Being like, because clearly that guy Graham Hancock doesn't buy into any of it, and so he's just treating it like a fanfic thing where he's like, this could be real too, you know? Look at
Graham Hancock believes that our soul or our being, like the part, he doesn't think it's our brain. He thinks that our brain is like a television set that is receiving the signal that is our soul. That's what this physical part of us is. And that when we just
passed into a new field.
And when the body is gone, that your soul or your intelligence goes on living afterwards.
And he's a scientist?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but like I would believe like there are lots of scientists who are religious, but very few I don't know. Like that's just
he's not religious. He doesn't preach that religion I just was talking about.
No, I know. I was saying there are scientists who are religious. So when they're like, "Oh, I'm a Christian and I'm a physicist," or "I'm whatever and I'm a scientist," you're like, "All right, yeah, I understand." Like there's a cultural thing to that. But for a scientist who's really into science to be like, I don't believe the brain's responsible for all this. It's like, yeah, well, do 3 minutes of Googling and you'll be like, oh, yeah, see, they used to think it was the heart, and then they very quickly found out it's the brain as soon as we had the capacity to analyze the brain.
Well, what he's talking
that believes the Earth is 3,000 years old.
Turn our brain off, turn it back on, and we're still here.
That's even more ridiculous.
We don't turn our brain off and turn it back on. What do you mean? Can you define?
When it has a near-death experience, your brain stops, you're flatline, no electrical impulses in your brain, then they just turn you right back on, and I'm here again, and it's me. It's still me. I don't know what consciousness is. I don't think anybody does, and I don't think science has figured it out quite yet either. That's kind of like the biggest question of them all, right? Is like, what is consciousness? Like, are we either a product of this like fleshy goo between our ears? Or are we something a little bit more important than that?
It's interesting that a guy like him, who seems to make fun of religion for taking a naturalistic event and imposing a super complex, unknowable being as the catalyst for it, and then saying, oh, and the brain, that's not responsible for all of our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and actions. It's actually this infinitely complex and undefinable ethos in our body that is responsible for that. You know, it's like the same thing, that same paradigm of you're explaining natural cause, a natural system with an unexplainable, unknowable entity. because it's confusing. You know, it's just kind of the same structure.
I don't know enough about the brain and how it works. I don't know that we've definitely settled on that the brain is what creates our consciousness. I just don't know that. I don't think anybody does, or that are. I don't know that our consciousness
It
ends when we're turned off.
Your consciousness, like the fact that when your brain shuts off, you cease
facilitates
to be,
it, but does it create it?
It
facilitates it, but does it create it? That's the question.
Yes, it does create it, because there is a video I linked to us, like in our PKA chat a couple days ago. It's some disorder where you're no longer able to control your body. You don't have,
you have to
without looking at it.
Look.
So basically, this guy has sensations on his body where, like, if you like slapped his hand, he'd be like, "Oh, I felt that." But if you told him to close his eyes and then put his hand to his right like that, he wouldn't be able to put it in the space that he wanted, because as soon as his eyes are closed, he can't feel
what's the word for that?
locomotion.
Is it proprioception or something?
Proprioception. That's exactly what it is. And so he just doesn't feel the locomotion ability. And so it's just, he has to look at everything he does to make sure that it's actually going. So it's all relayed back to the brain. The brain's the only thing that allows that information to be perceived. So as soon as
but
that,
now you're talking about motor mechanics and stuff.
No, but it's not just that. As soon as that area of the brain was damaged, he lost the ability to perceive information in that way and to respond to information that he would have been perceiving. And so it's like
about his body
because of his brain.
Yeah, because the brain controls the body. I'm not talking about command and control. I'm not talking about what's required for one thing to exist. I'm talking about. I'm saying that they could be, both things could be true at the same time. I know the brain is what allows us, and when I say us, I mean my consciousness, to control everything else. And if you fuck with my brain, then I just can't do that shit right. But what I'm saying is that what makes me me might not be all about the gray stuff between my ears.
Things
I
like
might just be
love
me.
and hurt and
that's your brain. I'm talking about me. What makes me me? The me
that's all your brain.
Yeah, that's the brain. Yeah.
It's
have you guys heard about the Italian doctor that is trying to put a decapitated head from a person and put it on another body?
Yeah.
Have you heard about that?
He's getting
2020
or
something.
Yeah, full body transplant.
Yeah,
he already has full body. No, actually, it's a head transplant, because he's gonna transfer a head to another body.
Yeah, but he doesn't become the life of the guy whose body is taken. He doesn't like come out of the surgery like, I'm Jeff now.
Well, no one knows. No one knows. Well, we'll see what happens.
We talked about this on the show
man.
a while
If that
ago,
works.
in that there were some people who felt like whatever makes me me, the thing Kyle was talking about, existed in the heart, which today sounds crazy, right? Today everyone's looking at your brain. But not long before I was born, some people thought your soul was in your heart, and it wasn't just a pump. So if someone actually does pull off a brain transplant, we'll all look back on it and say we already knew, right? Oh yeah, we already knew it was in the brain, but it'll be fun to observe it.
Well, it's not. It's a head transplant. So just to be clear, because the audience is listening and maybe they're not. This man is living right now, and his body is fucked. They have a new body over there, so they're gonna chop his head off and they're gonna put it on that new body, and he, being the head, is gonna control that new body. The guy who used to own that new body, his head is somewhere else right now, okay? And it's rotting in the ground, and whatever made him is either A, also rotting in the ground in his brain, or B, is being projected onto some other TV screen somewhere else.
Both guys are still alive right now.
Both guys are alive, yes.
You know what I'm saying, though? When they cut his fucking head off, he won't be, because he'll be dead. Because they're not.
I agree with that.
One guy's head is getting a new body.
One guy is dying.
Head is getting burned.
You think they give him the old shit body so they can still feel the casket?
But
otherwise, 6 guys just going to be like, oh, he didn't weigh anything in the end there.
There'll be 2 bolts coming out the side.
But I mean, if that works, it's pretty crazy.
I heard scientists talk about the possibility that his consciousness could be in some sort of weird limbo inside of his own brain, unable to touch or feel or sense anything, but only to be conscious in a void inside of that body. And they talked about how torturously and that would be to one's mind, your consciousness, to just exist without any way to
express
sense
yourself
anything.
at all.
I don't
Yeah.
understand how we are remotely close to the head transplant, and here's
We're
why.
honestly we're not.
Right here on my
I don't
arm,
think
people
he's gonna
see
succeed.
where people. This is a scar on my
Yeah, I
arm.
see it.
There's my ulnar nerve was damaged. There was a tumor in it. They pulled the tumor out, and then I lost some big percentage of the nerve, and it's why this hand doesn't work that well. They can't fucking connect the nerve that's here to the nerve that's here. Like that's not a
It's broken,
thing.
and it's not just broken; it was destroyed by the cancer.
It wasn't cancer. It was a surgical thing. When they cut, I think it was a pack of blood or something. But when they cut the tumor out because it was getting bigger, they also cut the nerves that it was growing inside of. So they're just scalpel damage in there. And over time, some of the nerves found each other, and it went from like totally paralyzed to, I'll make up a number, like 30%. But that's where it is. If they
this guy has no
fix
damage.
that, but they'll
So
be
what they're
damaged
talking
when they
about
cut his
too-
head off.
Well, they're not going to just lop it off with an axe. They're going to very carefully dissect it from his body, removing all these necessary plug-ins carefully and making sure that we don't fray any of the wiring. And they're going to try to plug him back into this new guy's spinal cord.
So
We're gonna try-
I'm outside my expertise, but my idea is they're like
Wiring harness back there.
Yeah, they're with a trillion wires in it, and that they
Bundle.
can't reconnect nerves, and that's where I thought we were.
Yeah.
I
Because
think they
this is
can
the first
reconnect.
time.
The biggest
It just
challenge
depends
that's-
on how they were separated or damaged.
that they will face, the biggest challenge I think is going to be, because I read in an article that the operation will take 36 hours or something.
It's a long time to be
36
dead.
hours.
36 hours.
And
Like
how
$11
the hell are you going to
million,
keep a head
150
alive? Yeah, and how are you going to keep life?
I
It's
know
going to
the
be on a
answer to
transfusion
that.
machine.
It's really
right?
cool. Yes. So the Soviets did this shit with a fucking German Shepherd's head. Anybody ever seen
Saw
the
it.
video of the
Yep.
German
Oh,
Shepherd's
wow.
head?
Watched it in neuroscience
Fucking
class.
chop this German Shepherd's head off, and they fucking pump oxygenated blood in one side of its brain and out the other, like using its circulatory system that's there, and they're just pumping oxygen, and the dog's head is just there, like fuck.
Wow.
Yeah,
Fuck!
it's just ahead. Like what's probably going to end up happening with this, because it's the first time we're trying it, is the guy who gets his head cut off will die during the surgery. Like I if I had to bet on it, I'd put like all my money on the guy dying in surgery and he never wakes up. And if he does somehow wake up, it'll only be like he won't be able to control anything. Like this is one of those like forge ahead surgeries, kind of like when Carson did the separating two Siamese twins at the brain. Like it's going to be like a breakthrough surgery where they learn a ton of shit, but this one's not going to pan out.
With
like,
heart
there's
surgery?
just no way.
It went like that too. Like people like, oh, they did a successful heart surgery. He lived 3 days, and then some guy broke a record and lived like 14 days, and then like there was an artificial heart that lasted for a year, and isn't that crazy? And now like they have it, they're way ahead.
Pretty routine almost. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to overstep because I don't know. It sounds like you might, but yeah, now they can put in new hearts, and it turns out okay.
Mm-hmm. It's really
I want
just the
pig
supply
heart.
of hearts that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
get
that
a
was-
pig heart.
Yeah, that was on the budget.
heart.
What you tell them when they ask you about your pig heart? I tell them it's 'cause I'm sweet as baking sugar.
What are we
So,
talking
guys,
South
did
Park.
you, South Park, yeah. Did you guys see the video I put in the chat? This
But
is a
we
game
didn't
we used to
finish
play.
Taylor's thing. Like he had a whole.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I want to
series.
go back to
What was
the
it?
urban legend thing. There's a couple
Yeah,
hard
yeah, yeah.
So, Iron Maidens. Do you know what an Iron Maiden is?
Yes, I do.
I
The
don't
band?
think so.
Yeah, Saddam Hussein's son had one, and he fucking used it on people.
So an Iron Maiden, what it is, it's picture a big sarcophagus that like a mummy would be in, except it opens and it's full of spikes. And you would put someone in it, and it's made of iron, Iron Maiden, and
Oh, yeah, this.
close it,
Yeah.
and it would pierce them, usually in non-vital areas, and they'd just be forced to stand up, kind of pinned there.
Yeah.
And it was a torture method.
Like a really
Or-
shitty magician.
Like, yes, like a very shitty magician. And they had like an eye slit cut so they could see if you were still alive in there. Because eventually, of course, you'd bleed out if you're just punctured all day. So
Yeah.
that was an ancient torture method. Or was it?
It was. It absolutely was. And because, like I just said, Saddam Hussein's son had one, like a legitimate one. It's not like he went and made one. He's like, hey, give me one of those good ones the French used to use. And he fucking put people in it.
I'm going to agree with Kyle because he seems to know what he's talking about.
No, I've heard about that before. Saddam Hussein, like, son, you're talking about Qusay, right?
I don't know.
Qusay.
Say and Uday. Yeah.
Yeah, Qusay was one of the most brutal guys ever in the history of Iraq. Like, he invented torture methods. Yeah, I remember in the 80s there was a story about Iraqi football team losing a very important important game. Yeah, and he put the entire team in jail, and he cut off their legs and tortured the entire football team of Iraq in the 80s. He was pretty ridiculous.
That's not a good way to practice for the next game.
They won 4 World Cups in a row after that.
But the next team will know that if they lose,
they need to defect.
They know what they will lose.
Well, you guys are all wrong. The Iron Maiden was never an ancient torture device. It was actually made at first in the 18th century for circuses as like a sensationalist, like, this is what they used to do back in the old days. Throw you right in the Iron Maiden, close it up. Aren't you happy you live here? Or like however they talked. Like, that's what they did. And then it's in modern days, I guess, that the Hussein boys were so inspired that they made their own, but it was not an actual torture method.
Do you guys know what a paper town is?
Ancient times.
Paper town?
No.
Yeah. Oh, this is cool. And somehow it seems similar to an Iron Maiden to me. So back in the day, maps were harder to make than they are now. And to stop people from just copying your map and saying, hey, I made a map too. It's just like Taylor's, but I didn't copy, I swear. They would put fake towns in place. It was called a paper town. So, Taylorsville might not even be a real place. But if I copied it onto my map, I know I copied from Taylor. Like, they'd get one wrong. And but what happened is people would go there enough that, like, someone might put a store, someone might do a thing, and paper towns can become real towns because of that. And an Iron Maiden became a real torture device because of a fake thing.
Yep. So because of those circus folk, a lot of people got tortured in Iraq in the 21st century. I guess.
They were going to get tortured
20th
anyway.
Century. They just made it a little more creative.
Yeah.
This one.
They find a way.
So everybody knows about touching baby birds and how you're not supposed to touch them, or their mom will not take them
Disown
back.
the baby bird, right?
Is that a real thing, or is that an urban legend?
So I'm going to say that's not true, based on the fact that we had a bird nest under our porch and the baby bird fell out, and I put the baby bird back in, and it was raised to maturity and flew away.
I'm going to say it's not true because I think I've heard this one dispelled before.
Yeah. Chickens are birds, right? In the same category as you're describing, right? Because
No,
we
they're
had
not
chickens.
birds.
Well,
The chickens
in
are
the same
birds.
category,
I think
right?
they're birds.
They are birds. Come on. But we had chickens, and we always used to play with the baby chicks, but their parents wouldn't be angry or anything. So I don't think that's true.
All right. Well, y'all got that one right. Could any of you explain to me what a vomitorium was? Anyone? And it's an ancient Roman word. It's,
yeah, I think.
Yeah, it's either like they were gonna. Vomitorium. God, I know this.
I think the myth is that people would eat, gorge themselves, vomit, and then eat more. And I went to a vomitorium when we went to I think it was a town that got burnt down by like a volcano that wasn't Pompeii. It was like another one.
Vesuvius.
Maybe? I forget. Anyway, so and in this case, they said it was the home of a wealthy person, like based on what it was. And it was just a little corner, like not plumbing or anything, but like kind of a hole. The whole floor was stone and this spot wasn't. And they would just kind of vomit in that spot and then get back to eating. So how close did I come?
That's that. I immediately thought that as well. I knew that it was either one of two things, because I know the Romans that word is not the word for the fetish for liking to get vomited on. Although I think that like the another phrase for that is a Roman shower or something like that, is what they call it when one person pukes on you. Because I think the Romans were into that, vomiting on each other as a sexualized thing. But I'm going to go with this one.
Okay. Well, you are both wrong about what a vomitorium is. It actually has nothing to do with vomiting at all. A vomitorium is an entrance to a coliseum or an amphitheater of sorts, because it looked like it was, quote, vomiting people back out onto the street after events ended, and so it was called the Vomitorium. It was just the entranceway or the exit way from the Colosseum. So it has nothing to do with vomit. There you go. The more you know.
Indeed.
Edit that in. The star swipe.
With a little Bill who wants to be a law sitting there, just for no reason.
Donald Trump needs to watch that shit.
Yeah. Which how a bill becomes a law.
Yeah, that'd be funny if they like come into his office and he pauses that. He's like,
He signed a law. He did a real thing. Now ISPs can sell your personal data to advertisers.
huzzah!
I really thought there
One
was a
less thing.
chance that he wouldn't sign that.
Oh,
I
I've got a
was-
good one for
Go on.
everyone, but for one person in particular is going to know. Martyrs and 72 virgins. You
That
get
is not
72
true.
virgins, guaranteed in the bank.
No, it's not 72 virgins. That's a mistranslation. It's 72 raisins.
Raisins.
Yes. Google it,
I have my own theory.
fucker.
So the 19 terrorists take down the Twin Towers and the Pentagon and whatnot. And they go up there, and there's like Patrick Henry with like a baseball bat ready to kick some ass, and George Washington, and they all just start beating on the terrorists. And they're like, "What the fuck is going on here?" And they said, "No, it's 72 Virginians."
Virginians. Well, I'm sure Ahmed actually knows the answer.
Well, I do actually know the answer. The answer is that there's a verse in the Quran that was telling a story about people who defended their home. They did jihad, which is the literal definition of the word jihad is doing an action in defense of your belief or your home or your family or your land. That's jihad, not blowing up yourself. Well, that also could, in some context, and someone would argue that it also is jihad. But there's a verse in the Quran that says those people that did that got 72 virgins. So basically, yeah, the idea is true. You do get a 72 virgins if you do jihad. But it's always taken out of context from that story. It always, they think that it's applied to anyone that does it. But in the Quran, it doesn't say. It just says that happened and God gave them 72 virgins. So,
Yeah, it says on this very, I'm sure, reputable list that it is a matter of debate in Islam, nowhere in the Quran, but is reported in other texts. So,
Yes.
You know what? That wasn't fair of them to put on here because they just said, I don't know. This is the last
CNN,
one on
the
the
New York
list, and they
Times,
were
and-
getting
It has-
desperate.
It has
Yeah.
been mentioned in the Quran, but not in the context that people believe it to be. So it's kind of always taken out of context.
Makes sense. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Kyle. What were you saying?
I was just sent those 3 links from CNN.
Oh, raisins or virgins. I
Yeah.
remember hearing something about that, and I was like, there's no way that a bunch of people just have continued to misread raisins for this
It's-
long.
I've
They're
heard it
just
too.
translating-
I don't pretend to know what's true, but I will say that 72 raisins isn't really that motivating to me.
If it's the
Very.
year 1 and I have 72 fucking raisins, you're gonna be like, what? Where did you get them all? May
I
I
think so.
Could I smell your hand? The hand you touched the raisins with? You got 72 fucking raisins back then, and they're like, look, if you martyr yourself, your wife is getting all of this.
All of these raisins. That's a mid-afternoon snack.
I just feel like
Good snack.
even year
She is
1
just
version of me is
regular.
worth more than 72 raisins. I hope I bring in a dead raccoon every once in a while. You know,
I want to
roadkill.
like trade it in for a different meal. You know, be like, that raisins are great. Can I exchange those? Do you do exchanges here?
Substitutions.
Have it your way. You know.
Was that the last one, Taylor, or are there more?
I'm eating
there's
raisins
more.
now.
Nice. Well, this must
Here.
be heaven.
Oh, you have raisins.
The easy
I
way
do
to get
have
'em.
72 raisins.
Do you? How long do you have to wait to file a missing persons report?
They
72 hours.
I think I always hear like 72 hours in the movies and stuff, but you can probably do it right away, right?
I thought it was 24,
Yeah.
but I'm going to guess immediately.
Yes, it's immediately.
Yeah.
See,
'Cause
because like a
imagine-
lot of the problems
sense.
with these questions
Imagine
is that you're
bullshit.
like,
You know, like if Jackie is just gone, Woody's like, Jackie didn't fucking just go anywhere. She's been taken. Like, we need to put this report in now. Like, it just wouldn't work. Like,
Yeah,
there's
that
too many
seems
people.
That makes so
ridiculous,
much
yeah.
sense because like
Yeah.
it's one of those things that you don't think about at all when it's said in like a show or a movie where it's like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't carry that out. We're so busy with paperwork and cop stuff that we gotta wait 3 days for you to report it. But like if someone like imagine yourself in that situation of telling a cop like my son's been taken. When was this? I don't know. This afternoon. Call me on Thursday. you would be like, are you fucking kidding me? No, absolutely not. And so it's like the first time this question's really asked of you, you're like, oh, duh, of course. Yeah, like the cop
Right.
can't just say, no, fuck you, come back in a couple days. Like, yeah, of course.
I do believe
But,
that police may take it more seriously, like depending on the story, right? Like, hey, I came home from school, my wife wasn't there. Like, yeah, well,
On
sometimes
Tuesday.
that happens, right? You know, like,
I think if you say that, they're going to take you very seriously as a suspect. You're like, my wife hasn't been here since Tuesday. Why don't you fucking say something sooner? Well, in the movies, they always say 72 hours, and I
Yeah.
was worried, though.
Well, that's all of the good ones that I got. All the rest I'm realizing are like, I'll ask it, and I can only ask it in a way that gives away the answer. Because
Yeah.
I'd have to be like, how many wise men were there? And then you guys would be like, well, you want me to say 3, but that's clearly wrong, so not 3. I'll be like, oh, well, you're right again, you geniuses. Like,